All right.
Ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and on behalf of the Village of Cary and the Board of Zoning, Planning, and Appeals, I'd like to hereby call this meeting to order on this Thursday, September the 14th at 7:30 p.m. We have a full quorum of members, and at this time, I'd like to ask our Director of Community Development, Mr. Brian Simmons, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jasper?
Here.
Commissioner Kretschmer?
Here.
Commissioner O'Loughlin?
Here.
Commissioner Graziano?
Here.
Commissioner Pippin?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Chairman Cary?
Here. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to stand with us as we pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, everyone. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know I saw a few of you talking with Mr. Simmons. Just to help everyone understand the process tonight, we have 4 petitions before us this evening. And the order that I have them on my document is that there's Mr. Williams will go, Mr. Anderson will go first, Ms. Matson will go second, Mr. Trudeau will go third, and then we have Golden Eagle Bank Corp will go fourth. So that's the order. Now, I know not all of you would necessarily do this regularly, so I'll just step you through how the process should work this evening. Typically, what we do here is that we ask Mr. Simmons to give us an overview of the petition, and then members of the ZPA may direct some questions to Mr. Simmons. Upon conclusion, we'll ask the petitioner to present their request. We may have some questions for yourselves. Upon conclusion of that, you may have seen a sign-in sheet in the back. If you want to speak about any of the petitions, all of you are welcome to do that at any time. Be aware that we'll ask you to state your name and address for the record. The reason why we do this is because this particular body gets televised on YouTube. So just so you're aware, and we're transparent with each of you, all tonight's proceedings gets put on the village website and it's posted on YouTube. So when we ask for your name and address, that's because it's a matter of public record. And if you do want to speak on behalf of any of the petitions, we just ask that you sign the sign-in sheet because that is also part of the public record. So that's the process. And then we also will bring it back in amongst ourselves. You may see us have some questions amongst ourselves as we review the petition. We take a vote. And upon conclusion of that vote, it's delivered back to our elected officials, and they, in fact, become the final arbiter of our discussions tonight. So that's the process. And before I do a couple of housekeeping issues with the other ZPA members, does anyone have any questions about that? Pretty clear? It's pretty straightforward. So, gentlemen, in your packages, I know you're aware that you've got some meeting minutes before you, and I just want to make sure that everyone's received their minutes. Yep. Okay. And these are for 2 previous meetings. One was on the 10th, and Mr. Graziano, thank you again for filling in for yours truly.
Not a problem, sir.
And I noticed we have 2 sets of minutes because I think there were 2 different.
2 cases.
Yeah, 2 cases. So I'll maybe just step through them individually so there's no confusion on these. So I'll seek general consent on the August the 10th Lions Park petition. And those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any questions, comments, concerns? No? Very good. The second set of meetings is for Caper Park, August 10th. Before I call this one, does anyone have any comments or questions about the meeting minutes that need to be corrected? Chair will ask for general consent of the meeting minutes dated August the 10th for Caper Park. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The next set of meeting minutes is August the 24th. This was when we talked about the Westlake subdivision. Any comments or questions around these meeting minutes, gentlemen? Chair will seek general consent of meeting minutes August the 24th for Westlake subdivision. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay.
Just a question.
Yep.
To me, at least, this seems to be a different format that we're doing minutes for each case instead of each meeting.
Yes.
Is that
where we're heading in the future, or?
That's a great question. I looked at this myself, so I will ask our subject matter expert, Mr. Simmons, for some clarity.
Yeah, as we previously reported on this, we did make a change a few meetings ago to format or meeting minutes in this format.
Yes.
The reason for it is that each hearing each case that be reviewed tonight is its own separate public hearing.
Oh, that's true.
So the minutes would be just reflective of that individual hearing. It's still
Okay.
gives an overview of what activities take place during the entire meeting. So on the 10th, the minutes reflect that there were 2 cases reviewed that evening, but the actual language in the individual minutes is specifically to that case.
So this is based off our change in format on how we're approving our minutes and everything else as well, then? This is just a progression of that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a good best practice from a minute standpoint that each case stands on its own in the minutes that are recorded for the hearing, so that if you just say if there's a legal dispute on a different case that happened the same evening, that it's not the minutes of all
You don't
4
have to bring in
cases.
everything?
Correct. It's just that individual case stands by itself.
Gotcha.
Okay. So if I'm interpreting that correctly, that would mean from tonight, we would see it.
We'll see 4 sets of minutes.
Very good. There you go. All right, we passed the math test on that one. Okay, so with that said, gentlemen, I'm going to call the first case. This is Village Case Number 17 ZPA 08001 for Mr. William Anderson. That's a conditional use for a detached garage. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Simmons for an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, the request this evening is for zoning approval for conditional use for a new detached garage on the property. There is an existing 1-car detached garage on the property, and Mr. Anderson, excuse me, is seeking approval to remove that structure and build a 2-car garage on the property that would be located further to the east. This slide indicates the proposed improvements as he's seeking approval for a 20 by 20 foot garage. It would be set back 33 feet from the right-of-way of First Street, which complies with a minimum setback of 30 feet for the corner side yard, and then also would be set back 8 feet from the interior side lot directly to the south. The proposed, no variations are being requested as part of his petition this evening. This slide shows the proposed elevations. Again, proposing is a 2-car garage. Would measure about 12.25 feet to the peak of the roof, which complies with the maximum height for an accessory structure for a detached garage. This slide here gives a summary of what the accessory structure requirements are within the village code. Detached garage per code would have a maximum ground floor area of 600 square feet, and maximum building height of 15 feet as measured to the midpoint of the roof. As mentioned, the ground floor area of this structure would be 400 square feet, and height would be 12.25 feet to the peak. With the proposed improvements and modifications with the driveway, as well as part of this use, he would still comply with the maximum lot coverage in the zoning district as well for 27.5%.
That was my question.
This slide summarizes the conditional use standards that are provided within the zoning ordinance. With any request that is seeking approval of conditional use, this is the standards that would need to be satisfied in order for the zoning board to recommend approval of the request to the village board. With the information provided in the petitioner's request and also based off the standards within the zoning ordinance, staff believes that the proposed detached garage complies with conditional use standards, and therefore would recommend, the ZPA recommend approval of the following motion. Approval of a conditional use for a detached garage for the property located at 130 North First Street, subject to the condition as listed on the slide and in the staff report.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Simmons. Gentlemen, do you have questions for Mr. Simmons?
He answered mine, so.
Perfect. Did the petitioner want to speak about this, or is that sufficiently covered? I don't want to presuppose any of this. You're welcome to do that, Mr. Anderson. Yeah? Yeah. All right. Okay. So, gentlemen, I want to double check before we move forward on this, if anyone has any other questions before I open up the public. So the public that's assembled here is welcome to speak to this petition if you choose to. Does anyone assembled here want to speak to this petition? Okay, so hearing none, we'll close that part of our meeting. Gentlemen, is there anything that you want to discuss before I call this motion?
I guess for the petitioner, only one question. You notified all your neighbors. Did any of them have any comments or concerns at all?
I didn't get any replies from anybody.
Good, okay.
So, Mr. Anderson, please forgive me, but because now you're speaking, you should just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is William Anderson. I live at 130 North First Street, Cary, Illinois, 6001327. 08, I think.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Appreciate it. Okay, any other questions, gentlemen, for Mr. Anderson? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of a conditional use for a detached garage for the property located at 130 North First Street, subject to the following conditions. 1, the color, siding, and roofing materials of the detached garage shall match the materials on the primary structure.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion on the motion? Mr. Simmons, would you call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Jasper?
Yes.
Commissioner Kretschmer?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Loughlin?
Yes.
Commissioner Graziano?
Yes.
Commissioner Pippin?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Chairman Corey.
Yes. So, Mr. Anderson, you have a favorable approval, and as I mentioned, this goes before the elected officials. My suggestion would be to stay in very close contact with Mr. Simmons. He'll let you know when the next meeting's going to be, and that's the next step in the process, but we'll wish you every success with your project.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good evening. So our next case is ZPA case 08003. This is for Miss Barbara Matson. It's a conditional use for a detached garage, and it's also a variance for a side yard setback and a variance for the ground floor area. And the location is 460 West James Way. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Simmons for an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As similar to the previous case, the request this evening is for conditional use for a detached garage at a property located on West James Way. In addition to the conditional use, they are seeking approval of 2 variances in order to construct the garage as proposed. This slide shows the location of the detached garage. It will be located to the northwest of the existing home on the property in the rear yard adjacent to the west property line. The size of the garage as proposed is 24 by 28 feet, which is 672 square feet in area, which would exceed the maximum ground floor area permitted for a detached garage structure. In addition, as you can see on the slide, there are 2, it would comply with the rear yard setback for an accessory structure of over 25 feet to the rear yard, but in the side yard, it would be set back between 6 and 5 feet along the property line to the west, with 5 feet the narrowest at the rear of the structure. This slide shows the elevations as proposed. Again, it will be a 2-car garage. Maximum height to the peak of the structure would be 15 feet. Again, code allows 15 feet to the midpoint of the roof, so this proposed structure would comply with the maximum height requirements for an accessory structure. Again, the slide indicates the requirements within the code for detached accessory garages. The ground floor area, as a variance that's being requested this evening, would exceed the maximum ground floor area of 600 square feet by 72 square feet. And then the setback required for the side yard within code is 8-foot setback. They're seeking a variance request to reduce that to 5 feet. The height and lot coverage for the overall conditions on the approval would comply with code, so no variances were requested as part of that. Again, standards within the zoning ordinance for conditional uses would apply in this case for the proposed construction of the detached garage. These would be standards that would be reviewed by the commission and recommended for approval should the proposed conditional use structure comply with these requirements. Likewise, the variance standards would apply for the 2 variances that are being requested for the setback and ground floor area, specifically looking at that, the standards here would also be portions of the recommendation to the village board. The 2 variations that are being requested are similar to other variations that have been supported for detached garages in the past. I believe the staff report lists a few that have been approved for ground floor area specifically, but then also the setback, is a reduction that has been supported in some cases previously as well. With the information as provided by the petitioner and also in the staff report, staff believes that the proposed conditional use and variance requests meet the standards as established in the ordinance and recommends approval of the following motion. Approval of conditional use for detached garage, variation to reduce the required interior side yard setback for an accessory structure from 8 feet to 5 feet, and variation to increase the maximum ground floor area for detached garage from 600 square feet to 672 square feet, for the property located at 460 West James Way, subject to the condition in the staff report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simmons. So gentlemen, any questions for Mr. Simmons?
There any issues related to water runoff or ground coverage related to this? I mean, in adding this, what is the coverage left for the property?
We're still within,
Yeah,
Yeah, it would still be within the maximum permitted lot coverage for the zoning district. I believe this one slide was 32.6% is the total lot coverage. The last line.
missed that?
Last line on the.
Yeah, it's the last line on
bullet
it.
points. Code permits up to 35% lot coverage in this district.
Yep. But no
It's not
water
within a,
flow, anything like
yeah,
that?
it's not located within the
It's
drainage
a tight
easement.
neighborhood, yeah, okay.
And it's the neighborhood, similar to the previous request, it's an older neighborhood within the
Right.
village. There are other properties within the area that also have detached garages as well. So it's not out of the character of what
Right.
is in the county.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, anyone else? All right. I'm not sure, Ms. Mattson, if you wanted to address us, if you have comments or questions, or
Brian pretty much has it all covered, I think.
would you forgive me, but I think we have to kind of go through this process where you just have to identify yourself and name and address.
Dale
Thank you.
Mattson at 460 West James Way, and he's pretty much got it all covered. I think if I had the 8-foot setback from the side lot, I'd have to set it back further to be able to drive into it, and that's going to go over the ground coverage area. And just wanting to get it approved, that's all.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for the petitioner.
yeah. I do too.
If my mathematics is correct, the 600 square feet would be a 24 by 25 garage.
Right.
What do you need the extra 3
I
feet
got
for?
a trailer that's almost 27, 26, 8 altogether I want to keep in there. And I'm only looking for 3 feet deeper, so it's not going to look bad. It's not going to, look out of size with the neighborhood. There's other garages in my neighborhood that are that size or bigger. There's 3-car garages. And like I said, by going in the back of the yard, which you don't see up there, but it's not like it's going to be a big, I'm not trying to go wider and make it look bad from the street. This is behind the house, and it's just going to be 3 feet deeper. And you're not going to even notice it. If you look at the drawings, it almost looks square there. So I'm basically just trying to go back 3 more feet, and it won't look. And as you see the side lot there, if I were to go 8 feet over, I'd have to move everything back, because then I couldn't drive into it because the house was in the way. And the neighbors, heck, some of the neighbors' houses are 5 feet off the property line, so it's
Okay, and we're
6
sure this
feet
is
in
not going to look,
front. It's the 6 foot off the side lot from the
Yeah.
front.
we're sure this is not going to look strange because it's like, you have a relatively small house there. It's about
Mhm.
2/3 the size of your house.
Right, it's nothing wrong that's not already there. I mean, we've got 3-car garages there. We've got, I don't think from the front view, I don't think it's going to look any bigger than any other garages. I mean, I'm going to, when it wrote down 15 feet for the height, that may not even be the height. That's depending on the raft, the rafters. I want to go high. We've got one across the street that's towers over the house, and this will be lower than the house in the end. It probably won't even be 15 feet high.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And then my question is that, obviously you notified your neighbors. Any comments, questions from them?
Nope,
concerns?
not at all.
Good.
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, anyone else? Okay, so this is the time where we do open it up to the public. If anyone assembled here would like to speak on behalf of this particular petition, you're welcome to do that. And hearing none, we're going to close that part of our meeting. And gentlemen, before I call the motion, do you have any other questions about this petition? Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of a conditional use for a detached garage, variation to reduce the required interior side yard setback for any and accessory structure from 8 feet to 5 feet, and a variation to increase the maximum ground floor area for a detached garage from 600 feet to 672 feet for the property located at 460 West James Way, subject to the following conditions. 1, The color, siding, and roofing materials of the detached garage shall match the materials on the primary structure.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Any comments or questions on the motion? Mr. Simmons, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Kretschmer,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Graziano,
Yes.
Commissioner Pippin,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Jasper,
Yes.
Chairman Corey.
Yes. So you have a favorable approval. It's the same process. Please stay in touch with Mr. Simmons. That'll get presented to the next village meeting. And as again, they become the final arbiter. And Mr. Simmons is the best way to proceed forward on that. He'll probably give you the date of the next meeting when that's going to occur. So we'll wish you also good luck. You're welcome. The next case we have, gentlemen, is for Mr. Trudeau for True Fitness. The owner is going to be Larry Hooker, and it's a conditional use for a fitness facility at 760 Industrial Drive, Unit B. And again, we'll ask Mr. Simmons to give us an overview of the petition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, the request this evening is for conditional use for a fitness facility. The subject property is zoned M Manufacturing. This slide, or the manufacturing district allows fitness facilities within that district as conditional uses. This slide, cover slide here shows the location of the property, and then also I've highlighted the location within the building of where the proposed fitness facility would be located at. As proposed, fitness facility would be located in Unit B of the building. It's about 7,800 square feet use that would utilize the existing space. There were no interior modifications that are proposed as part of the business located in there. They would do some minor cosmetic work on the inside, but for the most part, the existing footprint, office area, and space in the rear of the unit would be utilized for their fitness activities. Similar to previous requests, the conditional use would require compliance with the standards that are provided within the zoning ordinance that establishes decisions that the zoning board would make votes on to the village board that the use would comply with the standards as presented. The proposed use does not require any additional relief from a zoning perspective. That there's adequate parking on the site to accommodate the use. Parking is provided in the drive aisle directly across from where the space is being located at. And then also the village has supported similar uses within the industrial park in the past that would have, with the proposed use, would have different peaks than other office or manufacturing uses within the center or within the building, so that there's a different parking demand peaks, so that would have a limited impact on parking in the property. As a result, and based on the information that was submitted by the petitioner and staff's review of that information, staff believes that the proposed use complies with the conditional use standards as listed in the ordinance. Would recommend this evening that the CPA recommend approval of the following motion to the village board. Approval of conditional use for a fitness facility for the property located at 760 Industrial Drive, subject to the conditions as listed in your staff report.
Excellent. Thank you again, Mr. Simmons. Questions for Mr. Simmons, gentlemen? That's pretty straightforward. Okay, does the petitioner want to speak on this application? No? Okay.
Everybody's really happy with the way Brian is talking tonight.
Doing too good of
You're too good, man.
All right. Well, he is very thorough. All right, gentlemen, before I call the case, I just want to double check with all of you that before I do this, if there's any comments or questions.
I have a couple of questions for the petitioner. What makes your facility different than the other 5 or 6 or whatever we have around town now that you feel that we need another one?
So I'll be the one speaking on behalf of Mr. Trudeau. My name is Nick Lopez. I'm from my address is 708 Cedar Lane, and that's in Genoa, Illinois, zip code 60135.
Thank you very much.
So what's going to be different? We're going to have more of an educational approach. So our catalyst is going to be fitness and exercise. But what we really want to do is we want to educate the community. We want to bring members of the community in so we can teach them, about every facet of health. We don't want to focus on just fitness, because I think the movement in the industry is focusing on fitness, nutrition, and behavioral health. So we want to bring all those ties together.
Okay, and how are you going to accomplish this?
So we're going to have educational presentations along with the personal training that we do. So the personal training and group exercise classes. We're also going to do Dave has connections with Navy SEALs and military personnel through other businesses that he has. So he's going to do a lot of safety training. He's going to get different individuals in there to teach workshops, tactical training, and so on and so forth. So more along the lines of training an individual for kind of the random variances that could happen in life, as opposed to just, the fit and healthy body.
Okay, mind, body as opposed to just muscle.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Works for me.
So, Mr. Graciano, I want to follow up on that, though, because I've sat on this board with Mr. Graciano a number of years, and some of the applications we've previously approved have more of a key fob approach, where you sign up and then you can get in with a key fob. How will your operation work? Is it you walk in the door and someone's there, or is it more of a key fob type of operation?
Yeah, so every time an individual walks through our facility, there will be a personal trainer within the facility. So most of the programs that they're going to sign up for are going to be classes. We're kind of in the works of deciding whether or not we're going to open up gym space for basically open floor time where individuals can work out on their own. But regardless, they would always be under the supervision of a personal trainer.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Mr. Pippin?
In Mr. Trudeau's letter of August 21st that he submitted to the village, he mentions family-oriented weekends for all military families, deployed fallen soldiers, and retired military will be provided. Very admirable. But I'm just wondering, is it going to be limited to those families, or, open to the community and they're also included, or can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so our plan is to do a lot of community work. We want to open things more to the community than a lot of gyms have in the past, even though, the gyms I've been a part of, they tend to do a lot of community work as well. But I think the thought and idea behind that is our gym will offer special discounts to first responders and military personnel. So that could be why those individuals were listed first, but in no way, shape, or form will those kind of events be limited to those individuals. We want to get community members involved as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Gentlemen, anything else for the petition?
Are there set hours of operation?
As of right now, we're planning on operating outside of the normal individual's work hours. So early in the morning, we're looking at 5 a.m. to about 10 a.m. We'll still have office staff in there. We'll probably only run classes until about 9:30, but we'll have our office staff in there till about 10, and then we'll reopen again from 3:30 to roughly 8 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah, hours subject to change in the summer, but for now,
Understand.
yep.
You're not running classes at midnight or?
No.
Put a lot of noise. All right. Gentlemen, any other questions for the petitioner? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
So this is the part, ladies and gentlemen, again, that we open it up to the public. Does anyone have any questions or comments related to this petition? All right, so hearing none, we'll close that part of our meeting. Gentlemen, before I call this case, any other further comments, questions?
Question for Mr. Simmons. Parking,
Yes.
is that an issue at all?
This property, no, from a code perspective, it would comply with parking.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right, gentlemen, Chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of a conditional use for a fitness facility at 760 Industrial Drive, subject to the following conditions. One, the condition shall be granted to True Fitness for the property located at 760 Industrial Drive.
So moved.
Second. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Any questions on the motion? Mr. Simmons, would you call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Graziano,
Yes.
Commissioner Pippin,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Jasper,
Yes.
Commissioner Kretschmer,
Yes.
Chairman Corey.
Yes. So you have a favorable review, and I think you probably heard this now the third time. Please stay in touch with Mr. Simmons. That needs to go before the elected officials. I'm not sure, Brian, if we know tonight what meeting that will be or not.
We're aiming for October 3rd.
Okay, so that's the next meeting that you'll be asked to perhaps attend, but Mr. Simmons will be better able to speak to that than I am tonight. So we'll wish you every success. Good luck. All right. Sure. We're a flexible group here.
You need name and address again?
I think it might help, just for
Okay.
the record.
Nick Lopez again, address 708 Cedar Lane, Genoa, Illinois. So my question is, do we have permission to start moving equipment into the facility. Is that something that we have not done yet?
Yeah, it would be at your own risk from
Okay.
a standpoint. So if you wanted to move into the space or do minor cosmetic work in there, you don't have approval to operate in there until the village board approves the use. But if you wanted to start building out the space or modifying it, I mean, as long as nothing requires a building permit,
Yeah.
you can start moving equipment in there. But if it doesn't get approved, then obviously you have to remove it
Yeah.
Yep.
from the site.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have one more case before us this evening, and this is going to be for the Golden Eagle Bank Corp., doing business as Golden Eagle Community Bank, and the petitioner is a Peter Waslovich. Did I get that correct? They're not even close.
Steve Fensel.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Fensel, thank you. Okay, and what we're going to do here, this is a conditional use for a bank with a drive-through, specifically section 17.20.030, and this is going to be located at 650 Northwest Highway, and at this time, I'll ask Mr. Simmons once again to give us an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, the request this evening is for a conditional use for a bank with a drive-through associated with it. Under the existing zoning district, the B2 district, banks are permitted uses, but banks with drive-through require conditional use approval. So the conversion from the prior restaurant to a bank use requires this zoning request this evening, as the use of the property is changing as part of the petition. This slide indicates the proposed improvements to the site plan that the petitioner is proposing to perform. There are limited improvements that would modify the existing conditions on the property. They are proposing to install a new entryway that would be on the building fronting Northwest Highway, which would have associated sidewalk improvements along with that. In addition to the minor concrete work for the sidewalk, they are also proposing to do some extensive landscaping on the property that would replace existing landscaping in the landscape islands that are directly located at the east between the subject building and the new Starbucks property. And it also would install parking lot screening landscaping along Northwest Highway that would continue the landscaping theme that was recently installed for the Starbucks property to the east. There are no other modifications to the parking lot as far as circulation or modifications to the drive-through lane. They are proposing to replace the existing drive-up window that was for the restaurant use, that they will install two windows for the bank use so that they can service two vehicles at one time in the drive-through while still providing stacking for a total of 6 vehicles in that drive-through lane. As proposed, the building elevations building would receive a facelift as part of the project. The building currently has EIFS materials on the upper portion of the building facade that would be replaced with additional brick. And then they're proposing Renaissance stone material along the main entrance to the building, new entrance that would face Northwest Highway, and also on the corners and near the top of the structure as well to provide additional interest with different material palette on the building. They are also proposing to install awnings above window openings and doorways to provide some additional relief to the facade and some play with light and shadow on the facade. This slide shows the rendering of proposed improvements. Again, on the left-hand image, you can see the proposed drive-up windows would replace the window which is in the center of that facade. And then brick would be proposed up to the top of the structure with the Renaissance stone providing additional detail in the material, and the new window is also installed. The landscaping here would also be reflective of what would be installed in the property as part of the project. The proposed use with the eastern half of the shopping center for the Cary Square. This is a table that we reviewed as part of the Starbucks request when they came forward for approval. This indicates the change from the restaurant use, the former KFC building, to the proposed bank. would actually have a decrease in the amount of parking that would be required for the uses. The restaurant use would require 32 parking spaces, which are existing on the property, while the bank would only require a little over 12 spaces. Looking at the shopping center and the 3 outlot buildings that are currently constructed, the parking that's required by code with the variance that was approved for Starbucks and the proposed bank, a total of 233 spaces would be required, where there's 244 currently provided on those 4 properties. So the parking as proposed would comply with code, but actually would decrease as part of the proposal. Additionally, the drive-through, there are no modifications that are proposed to the drive-through location other than the new drive-up window, but the existing drive-through lane would provide stacking for 6 vehicles, which is a requirement per code, so there's no variance required as part of that request. Again, the village's zoning ordinance lists specific standards that must be met in order to support conditional use, which are highlighted on this slide. As part of the zoning board's recommendation of the village board, they would determine that the proposed use complies with these standards. In the petition, the petitioner did provide a response to those standards as well, indicating how their proposed petition complies with these standards. Based off the information that was provided in the packet and also staff's review of the proposed conditional use, the change of the use from a bank or from a restaurant to a bank, staff is supportive of the proposed conditional use. The drive-through, as everyone is aware, is currently existing on the property. So from a standpoint that the use is already existing on the property and has operated there for several years, indicates that there's would not be detrimental to the surrounding property owners and staff's belief. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of conditional use for a bank with a drive-through for the property located at 650 Northwest Highway, subject to the conditions that are listed in your staff report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simmons. So, gentlemen, questions for Mr. Simmons? Okay. So I'm not sure how we're going to do this. So I don't know if it's Mr. Finzer or Mr. Guttemaller, but who's going to address? So.
Good evening, Joe Guttemaller on behalf of the petitioner. Mr. Finzel is also here if you'd like to talk to him about the bank itself. Staff has done an excellent job on this, and I don't know that there's much to add to it, but we're here available if there is anything. And my address, my office address is 1 North Virginia Street, Crystal Lake.
Thank you very much. So I will address this to yourself. Assuming this gets approved, what's your target date for opening?
Well, that you probably have to ask Mr. Finzel more than I. I know they'd do it as soon as they could, but it involves some construction.
Absolutely. Yes.
Recognizing the construction, I would anticipate second quarter of 2018.
Okay. Would you, for the record, please, thank you very much for indulging us. Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Steve Fenzel, personal address is 770 Carroll Avenue in Woodstock, Illinois, 60098.
Thank you.
Yeah, the construction would require some time. We would, anticipate that be the next step upon approval of the zoning, conditional use.
Very good.
Second quarter of 18.
18.
Correct.
Okay, just double checking. All right.
As you can see, there's significant work to.
Yeah, there's a lot of improvements to that building.
Yeah. So, gentlemen, questions for the petitioner?
Your architect's not here, is he?
No, he's not.
And then I'll address my question to you.
If that's fine.
Looking at your site plan, why are the handicap spaces at the farthest away, one of them at least, is the farthest away from the front doors you can get? The others are across the park. Why not along Northwest Highway directly opposite the entrance?
Well, we are actually addressing that based on the ramp that's already at the building facing to the east. There's a ramp there to the farthest, that'd be the southeast end of that parking lot. Our new entrance is actually very close to that parking space.
I thought your entrance faced Northwest Highway.
It will, and the very first parking stall right there is where there's a ramp, and it can be.
But that's not where your parking space is. Your parking space is at the far, what would that be, northeast end of the property, one of them.
I can jump in on this one as well. From a code standpoint, the handicapped parking needs to be the closest accessible entrance to the door.
We're going to certainly then, we're going to be resealing and restriping if that's, we can meet that. I didn't realize, I didn't look at that detail of it.
Yeah, it's something we would address as part of the building permit to require.
Okay,
that-
I just, doesn't make sense to me to be
Yeah,
Where they're
as
at,
far
yeah.
away from the entrance as you can get.
Illinois
Yeah, they're
State,
towards the Starbucks right now.
correct. Yeah, the Illinois State Accessibility Code would require them to be closest to the, closest spaces to the entrance. So they would need to be located on the other side of that drive out, so they're
The other
closest to the
side.
ramp. Yeah.
Certainly can accommodate that with restriping.
Very
Happy to do that.
Okay, so I get this straight, the parking that's shown on the east side here, is that Starbucks parking or is that bank parking?
That's the Starbucks parking, isn't it?
No, it's our parking.
Oh, it is your
It's
parking.
on our property.
Well, that's why,
It's on our
yeah,
property.
Yeah, there's the two one-way drive aisles that exist between the Starbucks property and the subject property. The parking that's between those two drive aisles, so the double stack spaces that are on the image you're looking at there, are on the subject petitioner's property. All the parking for the Starbucks building, if you look at the slide that I have up here, would be, you can see the property line that kind of runs along that drive aisle that runs kind of parallel to the Starbucks building. And there's like 7 spaces that exists immediately next to the Starbucks building, and then there's another, I think 8 spaces that are along Northwest Highway.
Yeah, this is the Starbucks parking.
Starbucks property.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it throws you with the shading, yeah.
okay, so even though that's shaded,
It's
the
not.
whole thing is not,
Right.
okay, that's why I was confused.
That one farthest one is actually the Starbucks handicap parking.
That answers my question.
There you go.
With this entrance, I mean, we can certainly go here or here. We have a ramp already here. We're going to actually make them both ramps, so we could go either way.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graziano. Thank you, Mr. Finsel. So other questions for the petitioner, gentlemen?
Yeah, there appears to be one thing missing here out of a modern bank, and that's an ATM machine.
Inside the front door.
That's the current entrance facing Starbucks. We're retaining that entryway and having an ATM there, which is more safe.
Walk
You
in,
need a card to walk in and access it, and it will lock behind you.
as opposed to drive in, it'll be a
Right.
walk up.
For the ATM.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, other questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, as you probably now heard for the 4th time, this is where we open up to public comment. I don't know if there's anyone here that would like to address, please.
Jenna Auckland on behalf of Mid-America. We manage for ownership. My address is 1338 Cottonwood Drive in Aurora, Illinois, 60506.
Thank you.
We're just questioning if there's any special approvals required
Special approvals required.
per any easements that are with the property.
I think if I understand the application correctly, and I'm going to go back and make sure I'm looking at it specifically. I think what this is being asked to do is something called a conditional use, which is the purview of this group. And that is the only thing that's being asked of this committee.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Does that answer your question?
It does. That was
Okay.
my only question. Thank
All
you.
right, you're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else, questions? So we will now close the public portion of our meeting. And gentlemen, again, before I call this motion, does anyone have any questions or comments on this particular petition?
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
If I could, in order to be completely transparent, the petitioner's attorney, Mr. Gottemeiler, is chair of a McHenry County Board Committee that my company, that has influence and oversight on contracts my company may be involved with and I could actively be involved with, so I think I'll be abstaining on this vote. Just
Thank
want
you
to
for
be
your transparency,
transparent.
Mr. Pippin. We appreciate that. And gentlemen, I would say for the record, if you find yourself in a circumstance like this and moving forward, I found myself in this in the past, Mr. Pippin, I would recommend that you speak with counsel in advance of the meeting so that we can make sure that we're all clear on what the rules of the road are. But I totally understand where you are tonight, Mr. Pippin.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So before I call the motion, any other questions?
It's not really, I guess it's not a question. It's just basically, we're taking a restaurant with a drive-in, but because it's now a bank with a drive-in, it's got to have a conditional use, even though it's already got a drive-in.
Correct, because the way that the uses are listed within the code is a restaurant with a drive-through, it's a specific use in the table.
Right.
And a bank with a drive-through is another.
There's a
listed
different
use.
specific.
So it's a
okay.
different specific use.
That's what I was assuming, but I
Right.
was just strange to me because it's usually they're building a bank and that's when we approve a drive-through. It's not something with an existing drive-through.
Yeah, the use is changing as part of this petition. That's where the need for the request is at.
Gotcha.
If there was no drive-through at all with the use, a bank is a permitted use in that district without a drive-through. So they
No, I understood that. It was strange with the conditional use because normally when a bank comes in to do something like this, they're building the bank.
Correct.
This is a use that's already part of it, and that's where I guess my confusion laid was I understand it needs a conditional use, but it's a building that already has a drive-through. So
Yeah, if the KFC building had another restaurant use that was going in there, the drive-through is already existing. That would not require that to go back through the process because the use is not changing from a restaurant use to
but
another.
because it's changing to a bank, that's where the conditional.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you. That was my only question.
Forgive me for a second, gentlemen. With regard to this, we want to ask them to be called present.
I'll call. That's fine.
Okay, all right. All right, gentlemen. Any?
One more.
Please.
As I recall, these outlots have an existing cross-access easement through this front lane. That doesn't change with.
Correct. No, there's existing easements that would remain. There's a shared access easement that is to the north of the property that's in the Cary Square Shopping Center parking lot. And then there's also shared parking agreements.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Graziano. Okay, without further ado, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of a conditional use for a bank with a drive-through for the property located at 650 Northwest Highway, subject to the following conditions listed in the staff report.
Are you going to read those? Or?
Well, I would.
As soon as he finds them.
Thank you.
I assumed you were having issues there.
So we're here.
3.
Okay, thank you very much. So item number 1 is the conditional use shall be granted to Golden Eagle Community Bank for the property located at 650 Northwest Highway. 2, the proposed improvements shall substantially conform to the plans and exhibits submitted as part of the petition. Excerpts of that may be changed to conform with village codes and all conditions of approval. And 3, signage included in the plans have been reviewed as preliminary and will require additional review during the building permit process to determine compliance with village code. Any sign variances will require a separate review and approval by the village board.
So moved.
Second. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Any other questions on the motion? All right, Mr. Simmons, over to you for roll call.
Commissioner Graziano?
Yes.
Commissioner Pippin?
Abstain.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Jasper?
Yes?
Commissioner Kretschmer?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Loughlin?
Yes.
Chairman Corey?
Yes. So you do in fact have a favorable review, and I think you've now heard us say this for the 4th time also, is that please stay in close contact with Mr. Simmons. That'll be the next step in the process. We want to wish you every success in the community of Cary, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing your bank in the not-too-distant future. So good luck. Yeah.
Thank you, John.
So I have a procedural question now. I was asking, that was the sidebar with Mr. Simmons. If we find ourselves in this circumstance next time, do we want to vote as abstain? Because I think that can be categorized as potentially a no vote, as opposed to present.
No.
That's not
Abstain
correct.
goes
Abstain with the majority.
But if you say present, what's the distinction?
I think you need
It's a
legal
neutral
on that
vote.
one.
I have to check with legal on that.
Yeah,
as
so
far
I
as-
think I'd like to find
You
that
need
answer
legal
out.
on that one.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much, and Mr. Pippin, for your transparency. And without further ado, gentlemen, any other business to review, Mr. Simmons?
Not this evening.
No? And I do recall in the email that you said the meeting that was going to occur at the end of the month to go over the UDO is now postponed?
Correct.
Good night, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Working with the a consultant we've been dealing with, they've had a few staff members that have been working on our project have left the firm for municipal opportunities. So they've requested not to have it at the end of this month. We will have that workshop at the end of October.
Okay, very good.
So just some time for them to regather themselves and come back with their information.
All right. So unless there's any other business, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the
So
meeting.
moved.
Thank you very much.
You beat me to it.
Meeting is adjourned.